Hello there everyone, ladies and gentlemen, Coring15 here back. First video I think I've recorded in about a month. Only because I have too much stuff going on as far as like my uploads go. That's not what I wanted. I have all this stuff I need to do, and yeah. So anyways, let's get back to it. This video is pretty much going to be an answer to, or I guess a sequel to the video I posted earlier in the year. I will provide a link in the description. So basically, at the beginning of the year, it is now October 2nd, as you can see down here. And at the beginning of the year, during baseball season, my friend and I were trying to join a league together for fantasy baseball. And what ended up happening is he wanted me to be the lead or the host for them. So I had joined a bunch of different leagues trying to get him in, and the spots filled. So I would leave the league, or I guess leave the room, and in my head I went, okay, well, I'm not going to be in that league. Well, I guess I technically didn't leave. Long story short, I would leave these rooms because my friend didn't make it, not think too much about it, and then apparently, because I didn't necessarily leave the league, I stayed in these rooms. So I actually got the luxury to manage, let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6. There were 6 fantasy baseball leagues that I had joined and didn't actually leave. Or I guess 5. Yeah, so 5 of these. So I got to manage 7 fantasy baseball teams. 2 of them were on my own doing, the other 5 were not. And here we are at the end of the baseball regular season, and now I'm going to recap what I have learned and how things were going to go. I remember distinctly saying at the beginning of the season I was not going to care about any of these teams. I was only going to focus on the 2 that I wanted to do, but I figured, let's just go ahead and figure out like how we're going to play. So let's start with the Buffalo Blizzards. Now, the Buffalo Blizzards, all my teams are city-based names, by the way. I like to keep up the theme. So basically, stop that. So basically, this was the first team that or the first room that I was in. I call myself the Buffalo Blizzards because we don't have a baseball team in Buffalo. Although I feel like it would be really hard to have a baseball team in Buffalo, considering it'd have to be in a dome like in Arizona or something like that. So this was my team. For majority of the year, obviously teams change. Let's actually go ahead and take a look at the league. Let's take a look at the full standings over here. So basically, this is how everything went in the season. What's cool about desktop is you can look at this. So let's take a look at it all. It's the stats, runs. I didn't have the most runs out of everybody. I don't know if I had the most anything. Let's see. I had the most innings pitched. Actually by a considerable margin too. I had 300 more innings pitched than anybody else. That's crazy. I also had the most hits out of everybody, 1,400. Earned runs. These guys, this dude, his stats were like pretty bad, but he managed to finish 4th place. That's pretty impressive, actually. This dude down here got quad digits, and for innings pitched and hits, and didn't even freaking make top 5. That you hate to see it. So I think this team right here that finished 4th place didn't make a single move in the season, which is insane when you think about it. Chicks dig the long ball, or the long bat, I guess is that supposed to say. Okay. Let's see. So I had the most walks, I had the most Ks. I had the most Ks by a considerable amount. I had 107 wins. The next best team with wins was 86. Good God, was my team impressive, I guess. I didn't have any saves. You look over here, no saves or holds. In these leagues that I was not around for when it comes to the draft room, because I thought I had left the room. So what's crazy about the Buffalo, Charlotte, Orlando, Portland, and Nashville team is that I was not a part of the draft when it happened because I thought I had left the rooms. So the website drafted for me, and 3 of my teams won titles because of my draft, a draft I wasn't even a part of, which is really mind-blowing when you think about it. Points for, points against, win streak 6. I made 33 moves. That's a pretty tame amount of moves throughout the season. My team was pretty much on lock the whole time. I had the best record out of everyone. I had a plus 44 difference. This guy down here, he had a minus 4.1 difference, but he finished last. Which, this has got to be like what the Mets feel like down here right now. You hate to see it. Now let's go back over to the team. So, I don't remember who all I added for the season. I know I had Will Smith to begin with. I think I had Yandy Diaz to remember. I had Kyle Tucker. I had Seiya Suzuki. I actually wanted to drop Seiya Suzuki because I never really had heard of him. But I figured if he was on the Japanese team in the World Series, I figured, well, he's got to be pretty disciplined and good. So I kept him around. I had Wander Franco for a good chunk of the season in a lot of these leagues, but then he ran into some personal trouble I'm not going to get into. And then I could have dropped him, but I said to myself, what if the allegations are fake or whatever, and he comes back and then I look like an idiot. So I just kind of tossed his ass on the IL and just kind of kept him around. Like, even then, he's still 72% rostered in all leagues, so it's like, I wasn't the only one thinking that. Nico ended up on the IL 10, like, real late. But yeah, look at all these totals. I remember picking up Alec Boehm, I think in June, and he was cracked for me. He was a late ad. Obviously, there were some people that got hurt that I had to drop because they were going to be out either the whole season or for a while. This guy right here, Cincinnati has a stud in this TJ guy, TJ Friedel or whatever his name is. This dude's good. I like him. Like he like came alive here at the beginning of the season. I liked him a lot. I actually picked him up in a couple of my leagues, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah, I had him in my Portland league. And then this guy, he was real good, but he got hurt. As you can see, the totals over here for the fantasy points. Most of the rosterings, TJ Friedel, I feel like people were sleeping on this guy. He cracked 352 overall for points. That's even more than Will Smith. And I know I think Will Smith was hurt for a little bit. And then down here, we take a look at my pitching staff. All of these guys I pretty much had the whole season. The only ones that were ads were Grayson Rodriguez, Kyle Bradish, and I think Kenta Maeda. I think I had Montgomery to begin with. I had Joe Ryan to begin with. I had the 2 aces in Minnesota. I had Logan Webb, who freaking was cracked in San Francisco. And anytime you have Garrett Cole, Spencer Strider, Merrill Kelly, and like Pablo Lopez on your fucking pitching staff, that's just going to be really hard to overcome. So I could see why you see I just defeated the shit out of Glenwood over here. I just beat the crap out of him. So this was my first team. Very happy with it. Buffalo was one of those teams that they actually were leading a majority of the season. So I don't know if you've noticed, but if you've ever ran more than 1 or 2 or 3 teams, or in my case 7, it reshuffles how they are based on what the record is. So Charlotte was my number 2 team for a good while. It seemed like these 2 were always the best, and then these 2 were kind of the next best. And then Orlando's an interesting story, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. But yeah, Buffalo and Charlotte were pretty much my 2 best teams. And now, the funny thing about Charlotte that I'm actually going to cover right now is, as we get done talking about Buffalo, I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to be in the rotation. You know who I had at the beginning of the season in a lot of my leagues? Tyler Wells. The crazy thing about Tyler Wells is that for the Baltimore Orioles, he had a score of 244. And he was technically the best pitcher available waiver line-wise because he had at least 40 to 50 points on the next best starting pitcher, who I think was Yusei Kikuchi or whatever from the Blue Jays. But it took almost... So Baltimore at some point in the middle of July sent Wells down to AAA. And it took Yusei of the Blue Jays at least a month to get to the same pitching number that Wells had. Wells stayed at the top of the pitching score lineup in fantasy leagues to add because he had done so good for Baltimore. But nobody picked him up because he was playing AAA, which was the wildest thing to me because I would have thought and it wasn't like he wasn't doing bad in AAA either. He was doing pretty good numbers. I guess they just had a crowded rotation. They want to get Rodriguez in some work. They had Dean Kramer and Kyle Gibson and all of that. And, you know, obviously Kyle Bradish. And then the move with Jack Flaherty, which honestly, I'd like to take a moment and, like, just feel bad for Jack Flaherty. That dude was supposed to be the stud. He was going to be, like, the next freaking guy for the Cardinals when Wainwright was out the door. And he got hurt last year, and he just was never the same guy. He came back, had a couple of good stints where he looked like his old self, but just real inconsistent, hard to control, kept walking a lot of people. So he goes over to Baltimore at the trade deadline, and I think to myself, okay, this is pretty solid. And then Flaherty just, like, he would put up, like, little instances of, like, his former greatness, but then he just still continued to struggle. And I had never seen such a freaking decline or a fall from grace from any, like, pitcher in the league. At least not like that in a while. I mean, pitchers come and go, obviously. Like all pitchers are always on a decline somewhere. But, like, Flaherty, in the short amount of time, and he's still young. He's, like, going to be 27, I think, going into next season. So it's not like he's old. It was just wild. Anyway, that was my Buffalo wrap-up. So, won the title with Buffalo. Which was pretty crazy. Got the first place trophy. As you can see, Glenwood was... Listen, he was down 250, but I applaud this man for trying, dude. Picked up Eduardo Rodriguez. Oh, God, he had Carlos Rodon. Yikes. Dude, Carlos Rodon is a savior sent from the heavens in my eyes. And I'm going to get to that in here in a second. So the second team that got developed was Charlotte. Again, just like Buffalo, joined the league, didn't actually leave the room. The ESPN drafted for me. So this is what the Bobcats team looked like. What's funny about the Bobcats team is that this team lost opening week. I remember because there was only 3 teams that won my opening week. It was Nashville, Buffalo, and I want to think it was... and I think I just barely squeaked out a win with Orlando. But Charlotte, this 18-3 team, lost its first week. Let's take a rundown of you guys are going to see, you guys are going to see when it comes to the waiver wire, when it comes to, like, players that I pick up in fantasy, I tend to stay with the same people. So you see Nico's here again. I even think I had somebody down here that I picked up later on, like... You're going to see a Nico on a bunch of my teams. Justin Turner was a mid-season ad, which he balled out for the hell out of for, what's it called? Boston. Good for him. I had Ozzy. What's funny about Ozzy Albies is Albies was actually dropped at some point in this league. I remember because Albies was dropped by a team. I think Albies got hurt at the beginning of the season. It was either Albies or it was in a different league. It was Osuna, but I think Albies was dropped by somebody like 2 or 3 weeks into the season because he got hurt. And at the time I only had Betts and Nico as a second baseman, but I was short on outfielders. I only have the 3 outfielders here. Spencer Steer I didn't pick up till like June or July. So I seen Albies was dropped, and I seen he was on the IL 10, and I said to myself, you know what? He's on the Braves. He's probably really good. I'm just gonna pick him up, and I picked him up, and that'll be a motherfucker. He put up 463 for the fucking season, dude. This guy cranked. So whoever it was that dropped him, you're a dumbass. First of all, I don't know why you would drop that dude, but hey, whatever. That's what happened to Adolis Garcia in one of my other leagues. Somebody dropped Adolis Garcia like in July. And I seen it, and I fucking I didn't care that he was on the IL 10. I picked his ass up, threw him on the IL, and I was just like, oh, you're going to pay for dropping that, dude. So as you can see, Jonah Heim, main catcher guy here. He was hurt for a good chunk of the later bits of the summer, but he came back. A little sluggish out of the gate, but he was fine. I had Sean Murphy as a backup catcher anyway, so it didn't matter. The only people that got added on their own from this team were, I think, Nico, JT, Ozzy, and Steer. Everybody else here was not added. I think I had already had him. I had Spencer Steer because he's versatile. And And then we take a look at the starting pitching over here. Kevin Gausman, Logan Gilbert, George Curley, Merrill Kelly, Jose Barrios, Cole Reagans was a late season ad. Kyle Bradish was a mid-season ad. And then I had Eflin and Ryan since the beginning, so I was chilling. Zach Eflin, I think. I don't remember where he was last season. I think he was in Philly. But I could be wrong. I probably am wrong. But he goes over to Tampa. He was not on the Rays, though. I know that much. So he had a rebounding year. I remember last year he was kind of middle of the road pitching wise, but he comes over to Tampa, puts up a .416 year with an average of 13.4, 16-8 record. Dude was hurling for them. We're gonna take a look at the league now for Charlotte, and you're gonna see real quick that it wasn't even fucking close. This team I had and this Bobcat team just ran the league, dude. We felt like the freaking, what's a team that, we felt like the 73-9 Warriors that one season, dude. As you can see, 18-3. The next best freaking team was 14-6-1, which, you know, difference plus 74. Points against, points for, average 280. I had almost had 6,000 points for and 4,300 points against. Look at this. I had 1,000 points on the next best guy in this league. This league, they just demolished. What's funny, though, is that I think a lot of people left this league at some point, because look at all the teams that didn't make any moves. 0-0. Half the teams here, I don't think were actually here partaking. I think they were just either bots, or they just forgot about it, or hell, like, it's a little morbid to say it, but maybe they drafted and, you know, maybe fucking something happened to them in unfortunate circumstances. I feel like that's happened before, right? You ever been in a fantasy league where, like, you notice, these are things I look for, and not just players. I look at recent activity a lot. I look at everybody's roster a lot. I like to get a good analysis of who my opponents are and how they play. And I think this is why I was really pissy with how the motherfuckers in this league are playing, and we'll get to that in a bit. But I look at trends among the teams and what they draft for, what they need, anything like that kind of stuff. I'm really detailed and really, like, nitpicky with how I look at my opponents. I know I probably shouldn't, like, what's the point, but I don't know, I like to study for myself. So in this league, like, I mean, I'm sure there's been times, right, where you're in a baseball league. Like, I would be the first person to say that if I was in a fantasy baseball league and I had made moves through the season, and, like, I noticed 4 other guys were making moves through the season, and if all of a sudden, like, come June or July, the one person that was making moves with everyone else, myself included, just stopped and didn't make any moves after that, I'm going to be the first one to think, okay, so either this guy is unfortunately not with us anymore, or he got freaking ESPN banned him for something stupid, like betting or gambling or something. Like, I would be the first one to kind of notice that trend. We take a look down here at everything. Obviously, this league was really tame. I can see why I dominated it so much, so hard. Let's take a look at the numbers. 802 runs, nearly 2,300 total bases, 781 RBIs. I pretty much had the top charts for a lot of this stuff. Not for K's, though. It looks like Team P. Actually, no. Fucking holy crap. Team Rolling Detroit SlumberSlam with the 1,200-piece McNugget for the K's. Doubt I'll stay first pick with 12 of 56. Had the most K's of anybody. Crazy. We come down here, stolen bases. I have 149. Innings pitched. That's going to be a trend, because most of these teams that auto-drafted for me were very heavily reliant on starting pitching, so I will definitely, for sure, have the numbers for starting pitching. 1653. The next best person, 1106. Nearly 500 more innings pitched than team driven, which is just wild. But this could be a combination of these teams that weren't, like, making moves. There's a good chance they weren't setting their lineups either, if they were just completely AFK, which, understandable. 1,500 hits. The next best guy, again, team driven with 1,000. 723 earned runs. And, listen, I'm a simple man when I play fantasy. It's almost like a procedure for me. Every time I go to lay down in bed, the first thing I do, or when I get home from working, or like just like between the hours of 2 and 3, I always set my lineups. Even if I don't think the matchup's good, I'm going to set it because 5 points is better than no points. And you know, I kind of treat ESPN Fantasy like how I play Monopoly. And for those of you that have seen my Monopoly videos, I'm a very, very hard-nosed, tenacious motherfucker when I play Monopoly. Like, I know everything as far as the math. I know the mortgages. I know the rates for how things look in a trade. I know who's going to win a trade versus who's not. And I know, like, the statistical, like, probabilities of when the dice roll is going to be versus what space you're going to land on. I should honestly be in fucking New York, like, on Wall Street or something. So I kind of treat ESPN Fantasy as like Monopoly almost when it comes to like setting lineups, looking at the data and everything, seeing what's going to be a positive. A 0.1% positive is still a positive. It's not much of a positive, but it's still in the green. It does not matter how you look at it. It doesn't matter like when the sun sets if you think it's a negative or not. However, the only time a small positive like that is technically a negative is if you run the numbers and you lower the percentages, right, of something that used to be in its place that ran a higher percentage chance. So if I ran something, if I had Max's starting pitching, right, and I can only put in one pitcher, and I had to put in if I had to put in like fucking Joe Ryan on the Twins to play against the Angels, or if I could put in freaking I don't know who's a decent starting pitcher, not insane. Oh, Jesus Luzardo. So it comes down to, do I trust Ryan on the Twins against the Angels, or would I trust Luzardo on the Marlins against the Cubs? Now, you know, the obvious choice would be you trust the Twins against the Angels, right? But I like to look at it a little bit in depth because this is where I start to analyze everything. I don't just look at the matchup and say, oh, this is a good matchup. I bring up another tab, right? Here, let's bring up a new tab real quick. MLB. Mother French, that's the wrong keyboard. MLB, right? Here we go, check this out. I bring up the standings. I look at their last 10. Let's click on the Blue Jays, right? If I'm going to have a starting pitching, if I get one starting pitcher and I have one pitcher to use for the week, I'm going to look at what they're doing. So the Blue Jays they were what, 6-4 if I had to get, no, 4-6. So let's use my example, right? The Angels are 4-6. Twins are 7-3. It's a decent matchup. Let's take a look at the National League, right? The Marlins. Marlins are 6-4. The Cubs are 4-6. I might be inclined, while the matchups look eerily similar, after I look at this, I'm going to look and see where they're playing. Now, if the Marlins at home hosting the Cubs, I feel like Luzardo gets an edge. And if Minnesota's down in Anaheim playing the Angels, well, it's like, you know, Ryan could put up 20 points, but he's in Anaheim. It's not Minnesota, and it's going to be really hot. How much hot weather does Joe Ryan play in versus when he's in Minnesota? There's a bunch of things I look at when it comes to, like, really breaking down what's the good matchup or not. So that's just a bunch of stuff I look at. Let's take a look here. There's a whole thought process that goes into my mind. When I set my lineups, that's not just, you know, put whoever is starting where. I take the time to actually look at it. I've left people on the bench because I felt like it wasn't a good matchup. I remember earlier this season, I left Michael Wacha on the Padres. I left him on the bench because not only was he playing the Dodgers, but he was playing the Dodgers that were sitting with an 8-2 last 10 and a Padres 3-7. And they were going to be in LA. And I left him on the bench, and you know what happened? Wacha got lit up, only went 4 innings, and put up and he took the L, -8 points. But because I didn't start him, those 8 points don't affect me. So let's take a look at the breakdown here. Again, no saves, no holds. I'm not a real big relief kind of pitcher person. I had a strategy with the Iowa Dreamcasters team, which we'll get into that here in a second. Points for, points against. I made the most moves, but even then my team was so good I feel like I didn't have to make a lot of moves. This league was definitely something strange. It's wild that I lost the opening week too. I remember losing the opening week. I think I lost by like a few points or something like that, and I was just like, yeah, that sounds about par for the course for Charlotte. Freaking Bobcats, but we went and did it. This starting pitching staff of mine, with the exception of Bradish, Reagans, and who was a late season ad? Might have been Barrios. With the exception of these three, Ryan, Eflin, Kelly, Kirby, Gilbert, Gosman, you know for sure, that's just going to be hard to beat. Anyway, that's all for Charlotte. Let's take a look at Nashville. Nashville, I did place a second place in, and it was real unfortunate, but it's okay. Lost 522 to 604. Let's take a look at the league, actually. I finished second. Probably rightfully so. I don't know. I think the team that won was really good. 17-4. Yeah, Team Herbert. I was the third best team overall. I had a plus 41 difference. Team Chamberlain, who's 12-9 with a minus 13, ended up in third place, which is fucking wild in my eyes. I feel like a lot of teams that come into the playoffs just kind of give up at that point because they don't really. Hold on a sec. I'm texting Michael right now on Discord. Anyway, so you take a look at what's it called? Minus 68 from Top Dog TDG, and then But yeah, a 12-9 record for minus 13 differential. The fucking end up third place is not bad. That's pretty good, actually. So let's take a look down here. We take a look at the actual hardcore numbers. Team Herbert, obviously I had the starting pitching. Chamberlain apparently only had 600 innings pitched, which is crazy. He must have had a lot of the relievers because he has 105 saves. I think Team Herbert was the best team. I will say, though, I lost by 80 points, and my Nashville team, and we'll take a look at it in a sec. You take a look at the moves. Me and Herbert were kind of top of the board for as moves go. Our points for and points against were real similar. Only Team Flesberg was kind of the only one that was kind of hanging around there at the end. Everybody else kind of not really sure what they were doing. Let's take a look at the roster. Now, the Nashville Super Teams roster, I lost by 82 points. But this Nashville team went through a lot of adversity as far as injuries. I lost to Shohei Ohtani pitching towards the end of July or towards the end of August. And then he got shut down for the rest of the season, I think halfway through September. Shohei Ohtani, he's still here. Let me see this. When I dropped Shohei Ohtani, when did I drop him? I've dropped him September 21st. And look at what he did. 828 points, 44 home runs. When we take a look at the pitching numbers, 3.2 ERA, 10-5 record, 167 Ks. This guy was my DH machine. And the thing that sucks is that if I didn't lose Shohei Ohtani, this matchup right here would have been a lot closer. A lot closer. I definitely think I could have beaten him. But because I lost, I understand that, teams aren't always run by one person. But you guys have to realize Shohei Ohtani is a one-of-a-kind player who is on both sides of the ball, defense and offense, puts up huge numbers, I think there was one or two times I didn't start Ohtani in the DH because he had some kind of discomfort in his arm or something, and they just what's his face on the Angels didn't start him that day. Lane Thomas was a nice ad late in the season. I had Altuve was hurt for a good majority of the first half of the season. He pissed me off for a little while. I almost dropped him. I had Yordan Alvarez, Yordan Alvarez, come on, dude. That dude, he cranks. I had Tatis. This is an undercover gem. I'm gonna talk. I'm gonna go ahead and take the time to talk about this kid real quick. Brian Hayes. I think he's got a good future in Pittsburgh. He's young. I think he's 25. He's 26. I think he's one of the more underrated people and players in that Pittsburgh lineup. He hits real consistent. Doesn't have a lot of power, as you can see his numbers here, but had a freaking 273 average, had 10 stolen bases, just a real good contact hitter, and he's a really good fielder. So I think the more Pittsburgh develops this left side of their infield for Hayes and O'Neal Cruz, like that side of the defense for Pittsburgh in the coming years is going to be dangerous, I feel like. He's definitely one of the... Jonathan India was another one. I feel like Jonathan India is a real solid piece on that Reds defense and offense, especially since he can run. Christian Walker, this dude had quite the turnaround. I remember last year he wasn't really on most fantasy rosters, but then he really turned it up, and he's like the slugger, the heavy slugger in Arizona. Take a look at the starting pitching staff. I picked up Lance Lynn later in the season. He's on bereavement right now. I don't know. Did they ever say why? No, it doesn't look like it. I had Kodai Senga. I had Framber Valdez. Braxton Garrett was a late ad. I had Michael Waltrip for a majority of the season. Michael King was a late ad. Tristan McKenzie. If there was ever somebody that disappointed me, it was Tristan McKenzie. He like came back from an injury, started 2 games in May, went back on the fucking IL, and then he comes back here late in the season, and he just doesn't do much. I should have just dropped his ass, because I think he got me 4 points against the Tigers, right? Yeah, I trusted McKenzie. It's a double-edged sword. Tristan McKenzie is arguably one of the better pitchers on the Guardians rotation. But this season compared to last season is just like night and day. Not even close. Hell, you don't even wake up for this. Like, holy shit. I wanted to drop McKenzie, even though I knew he was playing against the Tigers. And the Tigers are not that great of a team. They were in Detroit. I told myself, Corey, how often have you started a pitcher or have you dropped somebody based on a matchup and they turned out to be really good? And I told myself that I should drop them, but then I was just like, I think my problem is I keep too much faith in people that do bad. And when I tell myself they're not going to do good, I try to override it in my own thoughts and keep my faith up and belief in them, which it's a good thing I'm not a coach in the NFL, because I definitely would be probably out of a job. Overall, the team in Nashville wasn't too terrible. It wasn't too bad. Finished second place, wasn't like awful. I'm gonna drink one of my Mountain Dews because I'm thirsty. Nashville was one of those. This was a real oddball lineup and season for Nashville. It seemed like a majority of the season we were just kind of always like, we were like the third best team for a while, and then we kind of hit this snag in midsummer where I think I had lost 2 or 3 in a row, and it was right around the time Ohtani went down, which imagine that. And then Iowa actually became the next best team. But yeah, not really much to see here. I was second place, 15-6 record. It was pretty good. I do my best to manage my teams. Let's move on to the Iowa Dreamcasters. Now, the Iowa Dreamcasters were an experimental team. It was something I wanted to do the last couple of years because I wanted to see how it would go. And I'll be the first to tell you that the experiment, I give it a solid B. Not a B minus, not a B plus. It's a risky experiment. Team Pandemonium won the fucking title. Now, wasn't Team Pandemonium being a dick most of the season? 91 moves, that is a little high, but it's not insane, so. I had a plus 26.9 difference. 14-6 record, not bad. I actually had a better record than these two fuckers, but what can you do? Now what you're going to see over here as we take a look at our stats is this. 249 saves, 17 holds. Everybody else here, non-existent. You know why? Because I had all the fucking closers. I made it a point in this draft. I was here for the draft. I made it a point. For my experiment to work, I needed to draft every closer I could think of, starting with the best, and then I will draft the position players later. So these players right here, I ended up either taking off the waiver wire or I drafted later on because I maxed out my pitching. So I remember I picked up the only person out of this roster I think I actually drafted might have been Jonah Heim, because I knew catchers were kind of few and far between. Everybody else here was at some point a season ad. Paredes was not on for the whole season. Bryson Stott was not on for the whole season. JT, I don't think, was there for the first bit. Now, the Iowa League happened a week later after everybody else, so I think Nico was a draft pick. Spencer Steer, Osuna might have been a draft pick. Ian Happ was something, I think only three people. Heim, Nico, and Osuna were like the three people I think I actually took in the draft. Everybody else was picked up on the waivers. So this is what my position players look like, and honestly, not bad. Not bad for people that were for people that went undrafted, that I picked up off the wire, or off the fucking free agent list. Not a bad haul, right? And this is where somebody in week 2 or 3 dropped Adolis Garcia, and I seen that. I was just like, what is you fucking doing? Who was it? Who was the sorry bastard that fucking did that, by the way? Oh my god, it was Pandemonium. He dropped him April 30th, and I added him because I saw that he was dropped. He was on the IL 10. I just can't believe Pandemonium dropped him, though. I mean, I understand Panda won the title, so it worked out anyway, but that was a gamble, for sure. A position player like Adolis Garcia could be the difference in, being down 3 points or being ahead 3 points, coming right down to the final inning of a game. Oh, hold on a sec. So, and now we take a look at my pitching. I drafted all of these. The only person I added throughout the whole season, there was 2 people I added. It was Paul Sewald, Evan Phillips. I took Clace first, Williams, Romano, Presley, Bednar. I took Hader and Iglesias. Or no, I actually picked up Iglesias later on too, and Bautista. I picked up all of the elite closers. Now, there are 3 names here that are missing. You had not Camilo Duvall, Carlos Estevez for the Angels, who at the first half of the season was doing great, and then he kind of fell apart. I had picked up Liam Hendricks of the White Sox because he was coming back, so I had him shelved on the IL, and then he just didn't look the same, and then he got shut down again. I had Felix Bautista, who arguably was my best fucking closer. Dude, look at this. 396, right? Nobody touches him. Williams played the whole season. Bautista had been hurt since late August. And Bautista still has more points than Williams. So, Evan Phillips, I had picked up mid-season because the Dodgers didn't really have a set closer like they had in years past. They had a committee role. They had 3 people closing. They had Phillips, Vesia, and Gratterall. Granted, Vesia was being, I think, used more as the setup guy. But it was, Roberts never really, dude, I kept getting mad because it got to be June and the Dodgers didn't really have a set closer, but they were winning games, so it was just well, whoever I pick up is going to get save opportunities. But I think eventually Gratterall got hurt a little bit, and Phillips ended up being more of the guy on the mound. But even then, it was never set in stone. It wasn't like Josh Hader, who comes in every chance he's, available. This experience, if you are going to roll, here's my advice. If you're going to roll nothing but closers, no starting pitching whatsoever, it is great for about the first, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's good for about the first 6 months of the season. But come mid to late August, April, May, June. March, April, May, June, July, August. Okay, yeah. So come late August into September, the gamble starts to fade away, and here's why it fades away. Throughout the season, teams are competing to win, so they're always going to put their closers out there. But as the picture becomes more and more painted and clearer as to who the front runners are versus who's going to be struggling for the wild card, the usage goes down. Rightfully so. It's a smart choice. So that was my problem with That was my problem with several of these. That was my problem with Devin Williams specifically. Devin Williams, Ryan Presley, and not Bautista. No, Clase. Clase is a different story. We'll talk about Clase here in a second. Williams and Presley saw less chances for work because Milwaukee had run away in the Central and they had wrapped it up. So why are they going to keep using their closer if they're going to be in the playoffs anyway? Same thing with Presley. Abreu and Presley were more or less the swap out guys in Houston all year long. Presley being the more obvious choice, but as Houston kept mixing things up, even right down to the end, there were times where Presley just wouldn't be used, and Presley has been kind of inconsistent. So because of his inconsistencies, that also drew like less time on the mound. Now, I want to talk about who was I going to talk about? Clase. That's right. The Guardians pitching staff at the beginning of the season. Let's take a look at this. What's the difference here in the innings pitched? Besides Cano, before Bautista went down was a reliever, so that's why his numbers are up. But Clase, we take a look at his numbers. Now why are they so influxed like how they are? It's because the Guardians had a very hurt pitching staff. It didn't matter if the Guardians were winning by 3 or were down 5. Because so many of their rotation was hurt, especially in the bullpen, Clase was the only one who was healthy enough to pitch. So the Guardians would bring in Clase down 6 runs in the 8th because they had nobody else to turn to. Or they had nobody else ready that, could come in. The Guardians were such a weird story this season. But a majority of this first half of the season, their rotation, their bullpen was just injured. It was hurt, ridiculed. It was bad. And that's why Clase's numbers were influxed so high. That's why he's also got a 3-9 record compared to everyone else. You don't see a closer with a 3-9 record. You don't see that. 9 losses alone, it's because he was used almost every day. It's a miracle that he didn't get hurt, because then Cleveland would have been really fucked. But anyway, my advice is, if you're going to roll nothing but closers, it's great for like the first half of the season. But my advice is, keep a good eye on it, because out of the month of July, especially out of the trade deadline, going into the month of August, see which of your closers are on dominating teams. And if you want to make the transition to starting pitching, start with the closers that probably aren't going to see that much action, like Devin Williams down here. Williams' usage started getting a little bit lower and lower as it became more clear who was going to win that NL Central. And that was probably the reason why Evan Phillips, his usage went down, because the Dodgers were running away in the West come mid-August, and so it's like, well, if I'm Dave Roberts, why am I going to exhaust my best closer or my best reliever? Like, there's no reason to do that. So, my advice is, if you want to take all relief pitching, do it with the determination and the focus of that come July, you may have to drop a few if you want to like start going back to starting pitching. It's a good strategy on paper. I think it's a great strategy. I can think of times where, because of my relief pitching alone, if I was down like 30 with 2 days left in the week, my relief pitching alone would make up a plus a 70-point differential, just because the 8, the 10 points, the 11 points. My best relief week, I think at one point, I had made 58 points because I had six preferred relievers going, closers, and they all got their wins in saves. So it's like, it chunk changes, It chunk changes, and the fact they're used every day versus starting pitching, you get like once a week, twice if the rotation like falls their way. But relief pitching, you can use them daily. So you're like back building all of the potentials essentially. And I will say another piece of advice for the relief pitching is, you got to focus on the matchups. You cannot rely wholeheartedly on just starting them because of their name. I can remember. Now, obviously, I would start Iglesias. I would start Iglesias a lot because he's in Atlanta. Atlanta's got a good team. But I wouldn't always start Hader. And you would think, why wouldn't you start Hader? It's because the Padres are not that good. If you give me the choice, in a 3-game series, if San Diego's playing, let's see, if San Diego's playing Tampa Bay for a 3-game series. I'm probably not going to start Hader any of those days, even regardless if they're playing down in San Diego. I would be more inclined to play Toronto against, like, who's a decent team but not that good at the same time. San Francisco. Now, yeah, I'm not going to start Hader against that 3-game series against Tampa Bay because the Rays have a good team, and I just feel like even in San Diego, Tampa's just going to rake. But I would be more inclined to start Romano against the Giants because the Giants are a middle-of-the-road team, whereas Toronto's got a slightly better bullpen starting rotation and edge, like hitting-wise. So, and now Romano may not always, even if they're up in San Fran, right? Now Romano may not get a save opportunity every day, but out of the 3-game series, I guarantee you, based on this season alone, Hader would be used a lot less often than Romano. And that's where you kind of have to make the right judgment calls. Now, they obviously don't always work. You go into a series thinking, oh, Atlanta's playing Washington? Oh, yeah, you know, Iglesias is going to pitch in that series. And then the Nationals just mop all over the Braves, and you're just like, well, fuck. And then you see, like, Paul Sewald in Arizona. Arizona's playing, like, the fucking Dodgers, and they just mop over the Dodgers, and Sewald puts up, like, 21 points because he was used in all 3 games. And then you're just like, well, fuck. Well, now I just lost 21 points because of fucking... I overthought the matchup, or I didn't read too much into the matchup or something like that. That's where the whole last to 10, like, trends and patterns that I look at, that's where that kind of comes in. I have to look at, see how each team is doing and all that stuff. So the Dreamcasters was an experiment. I was happy with the experiment until about the end. It seemed like I couldn't make any good choices relief pitching wise. I think I left at least 40 points on the bench in the last month alone because I wasn't playing the matchups as smartly like I wanted to. I was probably also too focused on my actual championship leagues. Alright, that's going to bring us to the Orlando Cyclones. Now, the Cyclones were definitely a Cinderella team. This 13-8 record, do not let it fool you. This team at one point was 5-7, I'm fairly certain. This team was win one week, lose the next week. In fact, let's take a look at this. Can I take a look at my schedule? Because, yeah, here we go. Let's take a look at the schedule. Let's see. So week 1, lost. Week 2, 1. Week 3, 1. Week 4, lost. So I'm sitting at 2-2. And now it's 2-3. Over here, now it's 3-3. Over here, 3-4. 4-4. 4-5. 5-5. It was just back and forth, 6-5, and the list goes on, and you know, fucking 6-6, and again, here we go, freaking 6-7, and now we're 7-7, and you know, we're sitting at 7-7 at this point. I don't think this team is going to make the playoffs. I was looking at the matchups. We had a few weeks left coming through the middle of July. I was set at 7-7, dead 500. And I was just like, I probably am not going to make the playoffs at this point. It was going to be real close regardless. Luckily, a lot of everybody else was also middle of the road. Like Lumber Company or Holy Rollers or fucking Team Montoya, losing team, Team Melvin. Everybody was pretty much middle of the road. The only real dominating team was San Diego, the San Diego Thank Yous. They were 16-5. They were kind of really the only team that was setting the fucking floor. So it was just real back and forth. And then you know, even down here, look, now at this point, coming into August, this team is 8-8. And I win the next 5 weeks somehow. Somehow, some way, I win the next 5 straight weeks to elevate not only myself into the playoffs, but to have a chance at it. And it was just a real middle-of-the-road team. Let's take a look at who we got. We got Jonah Heim. We got William Contreras. William Contreras was somebody that was left on the bench a majority of the season, and I don't know when I picked him up, but I didn't always have him. Heim got hurt, and I picked him up because I wasn't sure. Oh, I had him initially, and then I dropped him in April, and then I picked him back. Okay, so July 29th was when I re-picked him back up. Ellie De La Cruz, Bryson Stott, Ryan Mountcastle, Lindor. I had Juan Soto. Juan Soto had a slow start to the season, but he picked it up eventually. Brian Reynolds, Anthony Santander. Now we take a look at the pitching. I had Verlander, who was on the Mets at the beginning of the season. Luis Castillo, Bradish, Rodriguez, Garrett, Wacha, Gibson. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These 5 pitchers were players that I picked up at some point through the season, because I want to think with this team I had Carlos Rodon at some point. And I had other pitching as well, and then I had to drop them because they went out for the year, and I was really sad. I think this team also had Dustin May at some point, and then he got shut down for the year. And it was unbelievable, honestly. So this team, we're gonna take a look at the full standings. 13-9 or 13-8 record. Let's take a look at the numbers. You want to talk about a Cinderella story? My Orlando team was exactly that. And let me show you why right here. 1,400 hits compared to 1,255. 675 earned runs. Had 300 less Ks. And just, and frickin' San Diego had people that closed. Now, obviously, if we look over here, I have more runs, less total bases, but I also had more stolen bases than anybody. It's probably because I had Betts and Steer and Lindor. So, and we take a look at the moves over here. Most everyone here was pretty mild. Losing team made 26 moves and still ended up 7th, which is kind of hilarious. So, I make 41 moves. He makes 47. The difference maker here. I'm going to go into the recent activity. The difference maker here. Also, before we look at the recent activity, I want to show you guys what San Diego is doing. San Diego's roster makes no sense. Maybe it's just me. I've never seen anybody play like this before. San Diego's roster coming into the last week. Look at this. He had 5 people pitching. And he had Williams as his own reliever. He didn't have any pitching staff. And I don't know why he didn't. I don't know if that was a move he was making, but look at all the position players he had. Like, I had never seen this before. Normally, okay, my friend Anthony, he taught me how to play fantasy baseball. He says, position players are important, but you should only really ever have one extra person on the bench. Preferably, and he told me, preferably somebody that can play a lot of the positions, like Justin Turner or Ha-Seong Kim or something like that. They can play multiple things, that way you can make the rotations easier. He told me that you should always stack your starting pitching up because that way you can utilize the full amount of starters for the week, which in most cases it was like, I think it was like 11 or 12 depending on the league you were in and depending on the settings were. So that's what I did. That's pretty much how, he taught me how to do it, so I started doing that. So I don't know why he was doing like Nolan, and then some of these players aren't even like fully rostered. Like he had Kyber Ruiz, I can understand, but he had J.P. Crawford for the fucking Mariners for some reason. He had Nolan Jones, this oddball guy on the Rockies. He had Cal Raleigh, who didn't start every day for the Mariners, who was more of the DH guy, and like and then down here he had Bailey Ober, and I know King and Rodriguez were late ads, but this is what made him lose. And I remember I was talking about Carlos Rodon earlier. San Diego picked up Carlos Rodon to use him against the Royals, and oh my God, it was fucking beautiful. Where is he? Here we go. He added Carlos Rodon, or had him anyway, minus 26. He didn't get out of one inning against the Royals, and that, my friends, was the difference maker. Because going into Saturday, I think I was chasing 40 or 50 points. And then out of Saturday, and then going into Saturday, coming out of Friday, I was chasing 50 points. But after Friday, and what happened with Rodon, I went from chasing 40 to 50 to being down only like 3 or 4, and I had 4 people going Saturday. And my team, let's take a look at what they did Saturday. they opened up the gap enough. Let's take a look at what they did. I had Luis Castillo, who lost against the fucking Rangers. That's fine. But I had 17 from Verlander. 20. Wacha pitched a gem against the White Sox. And Wacha was a gamble that managed to work out. And then Gibson only went like 5 innings against the fucking Red Sox. But I put up 46 points plus the 29. My position players had a huge day. And it was enough. He was chasing 54 going into Sunday. And because of Carlos Rodon blowing 26 points for him, the gap, it was a terminal self-injury. San Diego could not close the gap, and the 13-8 500 team from Orlando all season had been kind of just grinding their way, goes up against the Goliath of San Diego and fucking knocks them out of the champion. I had never been like, I understand, I won the title with Charlotte and Buffalo, that's fine. But there's a special place in my mind for these guys. Like, this team was just an unknown for almost the entire season until we went on that 5-game week win streak, and just, it was just wild. Like, it really was. Like, even, like, here, you could see, like, I picked up Brian Wu for, like, a game. I dropped Eduardo Rodriguez eventually at some point. And just, we take a look at the stats down here. Negative 17 for Rodon, 2 for Charlie Morton. Charlie Morton I had in a lot of my leagues, but I dropped him halfway through it because he was real inconsistent. Also, he pissed me off, so. But yeah, this team holds more of a special place in my heart more than anything. And I just, I'm just super proud of everyone here, considering that, like, a lot of these guys were like ads. Like, I think Mountcastle was an ad, Stott was an ad, Dela Cruz was an ad, Brian Reynolds, Santander was an ad at some point, and I lost Nimmo, and it was one of those deals where I just didn't know. Like, coming out of July, I was just like, well, at this point, I'm gonna have 3 teams set for the playoffs, or 4 at least, and sure shit enough, Orlando makes it, and we end up winning the whole damn thing. So I'm super proud of this team. It ain't over till the fucking checker flag waves, all right? Now, we go from the great teams that I had coached, and, like, even 4th place with the Dreamcasters and all of that stuff, and we go to the most bizarre league I think I've ever been a part of. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this league has got to be one of the most rigged fucking leagues, I think, in the history of ever that I've ever been a part of. And I'm going to tell you why. I lost in my matchup. I'm last. I finished last in this league. I finished 10th. 7-14 record. I finished last. Let's take a look at my team. My team wasn't even that bad either. I had Han, Guerrero, India, Paredes, Dela Cruz, Verdugo, Hayes. I like Austin Hayes a lot, actually. TJ Friedel. I had Machado, Kyber Ruiz, Wander Franco. My starting pitching could have been a little bit better, but I had Fried, who came in for 2 starts and then went back on the IL, and then I had Yuri Perez for a little bit, right on the IL. I had Sonny Gray, I had Hunter Green, I had Stroman for a good bit. Stroman, like, was really good at the start of the season, and then he got hurt, and then they used him as a reliever, which pissed me off. So, now, I'm going to be honest, I did not have Jordan Montgomery or Eduardo Rodriguez, or I don't even think I had Manny Machado either. So, let's take a look at the league. I finished last in this league, and that's fine. But what you're about to see is some of the most ludicrous amount of bullshit I think ever. We take a look at my stats. I'm minus 22 for the difference. That's not even that bad. But look at this. Look at this over here. I made 38 moves throughout the whole season. I had almost 5,200 points for, and, like, I feel like my Cascades team should have been at least 5th or 6th. But look at this. Team C, Malos, and Team Z, I wonder if they all know each other and, like, they're all friends. Because that is ludicrous. Even KOS was I mean, 149, that's even... I feel like if you have to make more than 100 moves in a fantasy season, especially for baseball, like, dude, like, I don't know what to tell you. I feel like if you make less than 100, then you were playing kind of correctly. Even, like, more than 70 is a little high, but I've been guilty of that before, so... But just 400 moves. Here's what's funny about this team. This team I was not around for the draft for. I wasn't around for this draft. So, I'm going to go ahead and set the tone for you real quick. As we're now an hour into this recap video, in which it will end soon. I only have one more team to talk about after this. But, here's the thing I never understood about this league. Not even a day or two after the draft had completed, Team C, Team Z were trying to trade with anybody and everybody. And the thing I never understood about those two was they were asking for key players of mine, and the trade haul wasn't even worth it. Like, I remember Team C, I think at one point was trying to trade me Carlos Rodon, who was hurt, for George Kirby and like 2 other players, along with 2 of his other players. And it was just an awful one-sided trade. And I just kept declining them all. And they must have, the first like couple of weeks of the season, they must have sent me both combined at least 8 or 9 trades. It seemed like every other day it was a trade of some sort. And I remember I got onto the desktop and I actually sent a trade offer to Team C or Z, whoever one had Mike Trout. And you know how you can add like little messages down at the bottom of the trade that they'll read in the email? I sent a message to Team C and Team Z. And I wrote a message. I was going to offer something stupid. Like I was going to offer Jonah Heim for Mike Trout, which I knew they wouldn't accept, but I just wanted them to read my message. I said, hey, I don't know. I said to them, I'm not interested in any trades at this time. You should try by June or July when normal trades should actually be happening. And then they still, like, afterwards kept trying to trade with me. So I don't know if these two are, like, fucking, like, punk teenagers or kids or something, but, like, I don't know. Like, I remember I was getting so mad at Team C that I actually made a trade with Team Dom. Let's take a look at Team Dom. Team Dom was the only good team that wasn't playing like a fucking asshole. And I traded. I gave him Logan Webb, George Kirby, and Alex Bregman in a stupid bullshit trade. And he had Jordan Montgomery, Manny Machado, and Eduardo Rodriguez. And I made that trade with him strictly because I wanted to better his chances at beating one of those motherfuckers in the playoffs because I knew I wasn't going to make them. So I was trying to self-sabotage myself to give somebody an edge so that they could beat somebody for me because I didn't like them. Which is honestly something I do a lot more often than not. If I have to sacrifice my own well-being to see somebody I hate or dislike fucking crash and burn, then you bet your ass I'm going to take that chance and I'm going to give the successfulness to whoever the fuck I'm giving it to and trust them to handle it. Because I don't like fucking playing like that. It just was fucking stupid. And, you know, it's one thing to make moves, like, every day, but, like, these two dudes, like, even, now, Malo's gang, I respect a little bit. Malo's gang wasn't offering any trades. However, I do think Malo's, Z, C, and KOS are all friends, and they were all knew each other, because the first few trades I sent to Team Dom got vetoed almost in a heartbeat. I don't even think Team Dom would accept them, and then, like, a second later, not even, like, 5 minutes later, not even 5 hours later, the fucking veto would reject the trade. So, I think all 4 of them, like, were just instantly voting everything that I was doing. So, basically, what I'm trying to say was, this fantasy league that I was in for this fucking Cascades team, I definitely think was heavily sided towards one of those 4. Like, like I said, I don't know if they're kids, I don't know if they're young fucking people, but I'm gonna tell you this much right now, their loyalties, they have none. Because they be the motherfuckers that would swap out their kids, like, 2 days after they got born for a fresher fucking out-of-the-womb baby in the hospital. They were making moves like that. Like, it just seemed like, dude, they were tossing around people like fucking horrors, dude. Like, I couldn't believe it. I finished last in this league, but this fucking league, this Portland league, was stupid to begin with. So that's going to bring us to our final team, the Springfield Isotopes. Now, the Isotopes are an interesting story. 7-13-1. I tied the first week in this fucking league, which fucking sucked because tying in football, tying in football or tying in basketball are like, you know, it can happen. But tying in baseball, do you know how much mathematical, like, astronomical chance that you'd have to have that happen in baseball is? Like, it is so high. Like, basketball, it's a daily thing, like fucking baseball. But in basketball, it's a little bit more often because the scoring system is so different. Whereas in this, it's never really set in stone because it falls back on what the pitchers do. And it legit falls down, like, so, like, let's say in basketball, right? Kevin Durant comes into the fourth quarter. He's got you 13 points, hits a couple of threes, goes back to the bench. He sits there for the rest of the game. Okay, cool. He got you fucking, you know, he got you like, what, 25 points or whatever, however the math is in fucking fantasy basketball. Nice. He got you 25 points. So, but since he went back to the bench, he was done for the night. You knew that was all he was going to do. But because starting pitching doesn't take place till after the baseball game, you could be sat, you know, 5 points back behind your opponent. But if the pitchers are awarded the win and they get that 5, well, then all of a sudden you're tied. So it's a lot more like surprising, I guess. It's a lot more unknown. So the statistical odds of tying in baseball are just pretty phenomenal to me. So these were my position players in the Isotopes League. Had Will Smith. I had Josh Naylor for a good chunk of the season, and then he got hurt. I had Kento Marte, who actually was not even added on any of the rosters, which is hilarious. De La Cruz. I have Tatis. I had Machado, but I traded Machado for Julio Rodriguez to my friend Anthony because he wanted infield help. I needed outfield help, and I just felt like, and Machado's his favorite fucking player anyway. So I kind of had, it was a little bit biased. I feel like I could have probably tried to trade him De La Cruz, but he probably would not have approved it because he likes Julio Rodriguez. But I was just like, no, if I give him Machado, he's probably going to hit accept because that's his player. So, like, the thing with my friend Anthony is, up front, he'll play like how he wants to play and everything like that. But if you can intrigue him, what I've noticed about Anthony in fantasy trades is if you can intrigue him with a trade, and one of the trade pieces is a person you know he likes, you have a higher statistical chance of him accepting the trade versus him declining it, even if it's somebody he doesn't necessarily need, but because he likes that player and he feels a little bit of pride about having the player on his own team, he's more likely to accept it anyway. It's not necessarily a weakness, it's just a slight edge I've learned to grapple with him on fantasy sports over the last few years. Which, I mean, it's worked out for both of us in the past. Also, I like to be real fair. I don't like to completely swindle anybody. I drafted Kyle Tucker first round or second round because this dude pissed me off last year. I got beat in the semifinals last year in fantasy baseball, and I'm just like, fuck him. I'm picking Kyle Tucker. That way he doesn't piss me off, except for if he gets hurt, and then I'm just like, what the fuck. Take a look at the pitching staff. Justin Verlander, Zach Wheeler. Zach Wheeler was kind of inconsistent most of the year, but you did all right. Kodai Senga, one of the more brighter spots, and honestly, really the only real bright spot of that Mets fucking bullpen, to be honest. Merrill Kelly, Rodriguez, and Bradish, Cal Quantrill, they were late adds. I had Chris Bassett, I think, since June. My bullpen was never something that I could get a grasp on, but here's the fucking thing, right? Let's take a look at the league. Here. We take a look at the matchups. Or not, I guess. A schedule. So, I spent a majority of the season fucking chasing shit. But let's take a look at this real quick, right? Check this out. My team, coming into the playoffs, was like 7th or 8th place seed. But let's take a look at my fucking numbers, apparently. So apparently the first round of the playoffs start, I put up 615. I'm the only motherfucker the whole first round of playoffs that puts up a 600 piece. Like, I probably would have beaten Anthony. And then we take a look at the second. Check this out. I put up 560. I put up more than anybody else. So if my team was in the playoffs, I actually would have won this championship, and it would not have been close either. which just fucking blows my mind. It was like all of a sudden my team just decided to hit a switch. Like, but see, all the games I did lose, it wasn't by very much. Like here, I lost by 12, and then let's see, here, or I won. What's another one I lost? This one lost by 8, so that's a combined 20. Lost by 24. So I lost weeks where it legit, the difference was if I'd started a position player over another, or if my pitcher had did better for like their time for their matchup. Like, that's really all it came down to. This Isotopes team, let me see the full standings real quick. This Isotopes team was very middle of the road, but we ended up 5th place, which was pretty nuts. Minus 4.8 difference. Oakland Athletics had the best team all year, but they were being assholes, and so were the Los Angeles Bears. So you know what? They finished 3rd and 4th. Fuck them. Yeah. Actually, we had a lot of city teams in this one. We had Arizona, Bears, me, and then fucking... I don't know where Piedmont is, but I assume that's a fucking place. This sounds like a place. Copperas Cove. Yeah, but look. Bears... 222 moves. Again, being an absolute asshole. Athletics, a little bit more tame, but Anthony swears they were being assholes as well. Maybe they were being assholes down there at the very end. And like... And it you know, I was 7 and 13. But look at the teams I beat. I beat a 10 and 11. I beat a 9 and 12. I beat an 8 and 13. And if I had won... And if I was 8 and 13, well, shit, I would have, you know, the top 4 teams. The only other team that I probably could have been better than would have been the Sun Blisters. But even then, it's like I was still behind Piedmont. The season for me, the first half of the season for this Isotopes team, I was just playing from behind to begin with. I tied that first week, and then my fucking pitching staff was just never something that I could never get like together. And then all of a sudden we come into the playoffs and my team's just like the best team ever, and I'm just like, what the fuck? But you know, that's how it goes in fantasy sometimes. So that's probably gonna wrap up this video of like everything. So we had first, second, fourth, first, last, and 5th. So if we bring up the old calculator over here, let's see if I can find it. This laptop is running a little bit slow, then I'm not very happy about it, but it's fine. I think the fan needs to be replaced. If I could just frickin'... Will you frickin'... Thank you. Calculator. So let's see what the average finish is between the 7 teams. That 10th place one is going to hurt, but I think the average is going to be like, I'm going to guess 4.8, maybe something like that. It's going to be between 4 and 5, if I had to guess. All of the slots that I'm uploading up here. I'm actually going to be recording Call of Duty World War II after this. Clear. Okay, so here we go. So we have 1 plus... Oh, that's not what I wanted. Shit. God damn it. So we had... I'm just going to do it on this. 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 4 plus 1 plus 10 plus 5 equals 24. Divide that by... Let's see, that is 7, right? No. God damn it. Okay. 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 4 plus 1 plus 110 plus 5. Okay, it is 24. I'm just making sure. Divide that by 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, divide that by 7. 3.4. Alright, so my average finishing standing-wise for all 7 of my baseball leagues is 3.4, honestly. And you know what? That's a podium. 3rd place, you know? I'll take it. But anyway, yeah, this is... Whoa! We do not maximize that whatsoever. But anyway, yeah, that's going to do it for this baseball video. I am playing fantasy football right now, which I did win this week by the hair of my chinny chin chin, thank Christ. feel like the Minnesota Vikings out here. A lot of potential, just fucking nothing to show for it so far. But yeah, this is going to be a sequel. I will post the original video in the description link for those that want to go back like several months ago and watch it just to see how everything turned out. That intro video is probably going to include a lot of players that I didn't cover or that I say that I had but didn't have or something like that. I don't know. It was like 7 months ago. Leave me alone. I hope you guys have all enjoyed the video. I probably won't be playing any fantasy hockey. Just because, I don't really know. I mean, I did okay in fantasy hockey my first year last season. I think I made it all the way to the championship, but I lost. Which, it happens. But, I don't know. I feel like I should take a break from fantasy sports, anything. I'm probably just going to focus more on fantasy football. Probably won't do hockey. I probably won't even do baseball next year. I just need to take a small break from it. Unless if my friends can convince me otherwise. But anyway, I'm Corey15. Thanks for watching this video. Thanks for watching and listening to me ramble about my stats and analytics about freaking just whatever the hell's going on in my head. But yeah, had a good year. It had some highs, had some lows. This Isotopes team was like a middle of the road. That fucking Cascades team, dude. What sucks about the Cascades is I took the team from baseball and I influenced it into my fantasy football, and we're sitting at 1-3, and I'm just like, bro, Portland sports along with the Trailblazers. I'm trying to uphill that city, man. I'm trying to uplift the city of Portland. It's just not happening. Apparently, the baseball team sucks, and the football team's not any better. The Trailblazers just got rid of Damian Lillard, so Portland's just in fucking shambles right now, and I'm so sorry. But anyway, I'll see y'all later.